Hello, Kennedale. Jeff Navarro's Kennedale News, and I hope you've been enjoying this coffee chat series so far. We've been covering the city, and we just got one more to do at this point with this recording to record. But we are going to go ahead and start on the school board. But first, a word from our sponsor. The Kennedale Rotary Club has allowed the use of this Zoom meeting so we can do this coffee chat. And they are starting up their flag program just now. Let me share my screen. Here we go. So if you've seen the flags that everybody has in front of their yard during Memorial Day and July 4th and 9/11, that's the Kennedale Rotary Club putting out flags. For $50, if you go to KennedaleRotaryClub.com and just scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a little sign up for $50 a year. You get six times a year. And what we do is we hire the Kennedale High School students, the seniors mostly, and then they fundraise for their prom this way. So we hire them to put these flags up for us, and whatever's left over goes towards our scholarship fund for Kennedale seniors. So all the money is fundraised for Kennedale students for their activities and, of course, their education. So for $50, 6 times a year, it's a good deal. Some of the other clubs do 4, some do 5. We're one of the few that do 6. KennedaleRotaryClub.com. Now, coffee chat. Kennedale School Board, place 3. I have 2 special guests, Dr. Maria Douglas and Dr. Mike Walker. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting us.
All right.
Absolutely.
Now, for everybody who's just, if this is your first time watching these, this is just a coffee chat. It's not a debate. All of our candidates have shared topics and questions beforehand, and I've put one in the hat as well. And we're just going to go through them all and just kind of tackle it on a good conversation about what's really going on without all that fancy debates and all those things that go on with that. So what we'll do is I'll introduce our candidates and we'll get going. Mike, let's start with you.
My name is Mike Walker. I'm a 35-year plus resident of Kennedale. Have served on the Kennedale School Board before. Was president of the board for about 8 years, served on it for 9 years. Former city councilman, former P&Z commissioner, and have decided to take another swing at being on the school board again.
All right. Maria?
All right. I am Dr. Maria Douglas, or Maria, and I am originally from Illinois. That's where I grew up. Went to public schools there, then came down to Texas about 26 some years ago, where I started working down here. I moved to the Kennedale area in 2006. And I specifically picked this area because it was very similar as to the high school that I grew up in, the school district that I grew up in. It was very small, very rural, a little more agricultural than Kennedale is, but I really wanted kind of that small hometown feel. We had one high school as well, less than 1,000 students in the high school. So it felt very similar. And I really wanted that experience for my kiddos. So that's why I very specifically picked the Kennedale School District to move into. And I'm a mom. I have 6 kiddos that I have adopted, and I've been a foster parent before. I've hosted international students, foreign exchange students. So I really have spent a lot of my life very passionate about those 2 things, education, where I've gotten my master's, I've gotten my doctorate degree in psychology, and then also child advocacy. So that's kind of my story and why I sit here today as a candidate for the school board.
Excellent. And one common thing between all 3 of us is all 3 of us are Rotarians.
Yes, that's correct.
And popular to what some naysayers are saying out there, the Rotarians love local education and our students, and we do support them 1,000,000 times %. So wanted to throw that out there. So let's go ahead and dive into this. This is a question starting off with Dr. Douglas. So Mike, we'll go with you first. Given the current needs and issues facing KISD, what makes you a strong candidate for this position? I love it when we start off with those types of questions.
Okay. Well, to be honest, I had not really considered running for the school board, 6 or 7 months ago. I mean, this was something that I made a decision on after the first of the year. I have 2 granddaughters that are both in Kennedale ISD. One's in Delaney, one's in Arthur. So I do have a vested interest in our schools. And I've had the privilege of working on a prior school board and leading that particular board. I think one of the things that kind of pushed me into really considering this seriously was the possibility that we could very easily have a very inexperienced school board. Now, I think we have some talented people on the board now and some really talented people running for board. I mean, how often do you see in a small school like this, two psychologists running against each other? I mean, that's got to be a first, I think, Maria.
We're making history, Mike. We're making history.
I know it. On the other side, though, we could have 5 of our 7 board members that have less than 6 months of experience on the board. With the remaining 2, one of those is just completing his first term. And I felt like that some experience there could be helpful to the board. You take that and then also add a relatively new superintendent. We hired, he had 2 years of experience. He's been here 2 years. So that can be problematic. We face, I think, some serious challenges in our district. Now, some of these challenges are very different than the ones I faced when I was on the board before, but some of them are similar too. We had facility issues when I was on before. We had a fire that destroyed the junior high 1 month after we were elected on the board. We had poor teacher pay at the time. We were losing our new teachers. So we had some similar issues, and I do think experience can help on some of these issues. Since my time on the school board, I've been serving on the university board of trustees, and I think that's also given me a little broader perspective on preparing some of our children and our students for a post-graduation life. Maria and I both have doctoral degrees in psychology, which I think is a great asset. I also have a couple of law degrees and MBA, which I think served me well in my prior tenure on the board.
I learned something new about you. I didn't know you had a law degree. That makes more sense now. That because
I will work on the speeding tickets when we get out of here.
Excellent. Well, it's and I've said this before in the show too. Like, I'm so against term limits on things like school boards and city councils, because you can find yourself in a situation where you have like a week kind of wide, all of them are just coming in, and it takes a decade sometimes for things to go. I'm still working on a park from 12 years ago, and it's going to take another 10 at least before you even start. So I kind of see your point on that. Maria?
All right. I think one of the things that I bring to the table as a strong candidate is, like I said, my passion for education, my passion for children and advocacy for kiddos. I've got kids in the district. Over the course of time, my kiddos have attended Delaney, Arthur, the junior high. I've got 3 right now at the high school. So definitely, my kiddos have attended the Kennedale school. Not as much as when I would have been telling you they were 3, 4, or 5 or something like that. So we're fine. Freshman, sophomore, and junior. We're great at this point. We're fantastic. They're stupendous young ladies. So we've made it. I think I've got some extensive board experience as well, not on a school board, but I have served over 9 years on a state board. That was with the Department of Health and Human Services. So I have the state board experience. I also served on a regional board as a regional representative and as a legislative representative. So I do have like 9 years of experience there. So I do know what governance on boards is and sort of how boards operate and what the expectations are with boards.
Sure.
I also, because I've had 26 years of experience and service as a government employee, which is where I worked, I've got that proven executive leadership as well. So I've developed a lot of programs. I did a lot of evaluations of process improvement for programs, done program audits and fidelity of programmings. I've really hired and trained and done performance evaluations, written policy, managed $1 million budgets. So I've got a lot of experience, just executive level management and leadership type of experience as well that I bring to the table. I've had a lot of Kennedale ISD involvement over the years, as I'm sure Mike has as well, with PTA treasurer, volunteered as a counselor for the Wasted program, served in concession stands where I think I've seen Mike before. I'm serving on a couple committees right now with the planning committee. We're looking at our vision and mission and on the student health advisory committee. And then obviously community involvement as well. I'm an HOA president again, so that's serving on a board where we use the same governance procedures there.
Mhm.
And then I think most importantly, I bring a lot of qualities to the table. So I'm, very integrity, honesty, but also want to be the voice, very personable, want people to reach out to me and really kind of bridge the gaps and really feel like I can work very collegially and respectfully with everybody. So I think those are some qualities in addition to all the leadership and board experience that I bring to the table. And I think Mike is right. He definitely has the historical knowledge. I think that is a very important, but I don't think that necessarily translate to maybe the best management of what the current issues or problems are. Though I think it is very valuable to have had that experience, and I certainly appreciate his time and tenure and service. I don't know that board experience necessarily translates to current issues that we need to solve.
So on your state boards, you were appointed?
No, you had to be elected as well. The elections were they were elected, but they were different than these sorts of elections where you're putting out signs and campaigning kind of thing.
Sure.
But amongst
you
the group of
yeah.
yes,
Yes,
that's correct.
absolutely. Okay.
Yeah,
Like a TAD,
yeah.
basically, how TAD does it. Okay, I
Right,
understand.
and then every year you had to kind of be reelected to continue in those positions, and then you also got selected once you were on the board what position people would like you to hold. So that's sometimes I was a regional representative, sometimes I was a legislative chair. Again, then the body decided what position they would like you to hold.
And then basically you reported to the state legislature.
That's correct. For
Okay.
legislative, I was legislative aide, yes, and we would meet, on a monthly basis, and actually with commissioners and everything from the Texas Health and Human Services. So we were there with a larger body as well, and we were sort of one voice, if you will, at the table.
Okay, I understand. And Mike too, you mentioned you were on the school board before, but you were also on the city council. You were not only appointed but you did run re-election, I believe, correct?
Yeah, I was on for 3 years. The city council terms are 2 years. So I had 1 year after I was appointed and then another year. Just between all of us, school board was a lot more fun than city council. I mean, let's keep the mayor off this broadcast, but I do think school board is an enjoyable, or it was for me, a very enjoyable group to be associated with.
Yeah.
Well, I hope to have the opportunity one day, Mike. So
I hope you do too.
The school board's been roping me in a lot of stuff, like one little inch at a time, because I've always been resistant. I'm like, I'm doing city stuff, so let me just focus on one thing. Then it's like, hey Jeff, can you be on my Delaney advisory board for the principal? Oh yeah, sure. And then it moves to the district thing, and I'm like, how, Chad, did you rope me into all this? All right.
Well, let me share one thing with you, because I think whether Maria or I get on the board, it does kind of, and I think Maria, you'll agree with me on this. I used to have people that ask, why would you want to be on a school board? We don't get paid anything.
Yeah.
You have to run, which is kind of, as Maria's finding out, it's not the most enjoyable thing that we've got. And I think one of my comments to them was, there are very few things in life that you can do that the benefits and what you give will outlive you. And being on the school board and working with kids, as I know Maria knows, is one of those things. I mean, it is truly something that will outlive us. And so it's a blessing to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. Maybe another way to say it, Mike, is kind of really leaving a legacy, right? Really setting up the kids for the future and really leaving a legacy. Yeah. And I would just add, though, there's certainly is a process to like campaigning, but I have really enjoyed getting out there and meeting, neighbors and people in different areas that I haven't necessarily met before. So that has really been fun and exciting, and to kind of hear people's inputs and where they think we're at and everything. So that's really been fun too. It really has been fun.
Good.
Yeah, I got a lot of miles in during mine. I knocked on 1,000 doors. So.
Yes, I'm definitely getting my steps every week. Every day I'm getting my steps in. That's right.
And thank God it's in the spring too, not November. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. So this will be to you, Maria. Do you think the number of students in our elementary schools is problematic? If so, how do you propose this is handled? And I think
All
this has
right.
been kind of like one of those red herrings that discussions in the community. So that's my 2 cents on it. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so when I got this question, I thought this is a great question. It seems like it's kind of twofold, probably, or two issues wrapped into one. I think one is in 2019, House Bill 3, that school finance bill really kind of focuses on full-time pre-K. So we have got to figure out ways to do a full-time pre-K,
Which
right?
we
So
do.
that's going to be
We do start one next year. I found out
correct.
this the other day. So
Yes,
they
correct.
are doing
So,
one this year, quote unquote. Sorry to interrupt you. They're doing one, and I believe it's the bilingual one, but they're looking to hiring because they have to do another one, and they're going to do a step plan until all of them are done in the next couple of years. That's the plan, at least. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
correct. So that is something that we're gonna have to look at with spacing and how we're gonna
Absolutely.
work all that. And then obviously the growth in the community, right? And all the development that's going on. So I think one thing was really good to hear and to understand is that the district is kind of being proactive and that they have been looking at some different options. I think there's a third party that has really done already like a space utilization review and looked at what square footage all of our buildings have currently and how could we repurpose and reutilize the most effectively. So I'll just kind of recap a couple of those. I don't think any decisions have been made. Obviously, it is something that still needs to be discussed with all the stakeholders and a lot of community meetings, but a couple things that have been tossed around that seem rather viable. They were looking at one option of doing kind of like a standalone pre-K building with outside playscapes and bathrooms inside like you would for a pre-K. But I think the discussion there was that's about 60 kiddos that are currently served. And that had the cost of about 4 million. So then there was many options, like I said, many options that were kind of on the table being looked at. But another option that seemed more viable at this point to maybe explore further was to do a pre-K, K, and first, which would serve about 400 students. And then keep our 2 campuses right now, Delaney and Patterson, with 2 through 5, grades 2 through 5. And then a junior high with 6 through 8 and a high school with 9 through 12. So if you look at that composition, it allows kids to stay at least 3 years, together in one building for pre-K through first, and then 2nd through 5th, 6th through 8th, and then 4 years together for high school. I think when they looked at, again, the square footage and sort of the classroom, the number of classrooms and spacing that they had, one of the proposals was to repurpose Arthur Intermediate as a pre-K, K first. And they looked at what renovations would need to be done with the junior high. And then obviously our high school has room for growth. Doing that model would still allow for growth. There wouldn't have to be any rezoning right now. It would be able to maintain some of the culture that everybody really values at Delaney and Arthur. And I think those costs that they were looking at just to kind of do a baseline conversion at Arthur would be like 1 million. With that would be like painting walls, taking out some of the walls, carpeting, cubbies to accommodate that. And then an entire conversion, I think the number was for Arthur would be like 2.3 million. So again, nothing's been decided, but it looks like there are some discussions being had with different proposals being tossed out there with some numbers attached to them. Again, I think that task force has been looked at to go ahead further and proceed and then bring it back to the board. And then again, of course, this would go out to community stakeholders. So it may not look anything like some of those proposals at the end, but at least there are some conversations being had about what are some options and what are some costs involved.
Okay. Mike?
Well, I would agree with Maria. This is all kind of in the let's look at it and massage it and go from there. I mean, the issue is our enrollment's been flat or declining here over the past few years. The concern is that we have 5 or 6, depending on how you look at it, housing projects that could significantly affect our capacity. And I think, obviously that calls for some planning, some concern because if we wait till that's done and we have the influx of kids, then we got a problem. Part of the issue is when we're dealing with our pre-K, we have a student teacher ratio that's problematic, and they're struggling with that right now. I know in Delaney, it's recommended by the people that have done the studies on this that you have about an 8-to-1 student to teacher ratio in pre-K. At the high end, they're saying 11-to-1. There's also a square footage requirement that those kids need about 3 feet, a piece as you look at them. So you're needing more teacher help, and you're also needing more square footage than you would in a typical elementary, building. I think the engineering group that was there and presented theirs, I think they presented, as Maria said, several kinds of rearranging, and probably their plan is the most cost effective. I've got a couple of concerns about it. One is I'm not sure they have accurately depicted the growth that we may experience from these new housing developments. I think there really needs to be a deep dive into what we're going to be getting into there. You don't want to spend money on something that is not, that the capacity is not there. And then depending on which of these, that they decided if we went with one of those plans, you could get into some significant problems for parents. One of their plans was kind of jockeying around and having kids in the younger kids in 3 different schools. Well, that would tend to probably be problematic for some parents in terms of having to, take kids, drop them off, go take the other kids, drop them off, possibly dropping off, 3 groups of kids. And as we know, if you've been down Sublet and Kennedale Parkway is already a mess. It's probably going to get worse, even though the state kind of says it won't, but it probably will when they start the construction of the flyover. So traffic is an issue. Another plan that's been batted around for a long time has been doing a complete elementary school, just having another one.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to find land to do it on, and that's becoming progressively harder in Kennedale. And that's probably also the most expensive of the options. But it would be a neighborhood option for parents. As Maria said, they talked about a standalone pre-K, which would also be one of the issues. And then I think there's another issue that's another option that's kind of been floated around, and that would be, what if you took the administrative offices and turned those back into a school? A long time ago, that was a school.
Yeah,
that was the old high school, and then it was the old junior high. And what if you turn that into a school and then move the administrative offices out there on 287, where the school already owns that property, and built school administration offices out there? I think all of these have benefits and drawbacks, and certainly some of them are going to be more costly than others. I think one of these things that it brings up is you may very well be looking at a bond election, however this goes. And that's probably one area that I believe my experience could be kind of helpful. In 2004, we did a $40 million bond program that over doubled our facilities at KISD. No one on the board presently has had any experience with educational bond initiatives. That a lot of people on the board don't know the difference between the M&O tax rate, the INS tax rate. What's the state limit of an INS tax rate? How does that affect our bonds? All of that kind of stuff. So I do think, as we're talking about that, the bond introduces a whole much more level of complexity to all of this, depending again on what our decision is and how costly that becomes.